Hello, I think I'm live, but I mean, who can tell? Okay, it is actually, well, it's 7 p.m. my time, which is GMT or UTC. Oh, hello, Lisa. Um, hey, hello, Sharon. Oh, it's working. Hello, Madge. Oh gosh, yesterday it was my first broadcast yesterday. I was so nervous and I just kept setting off random things on my computer like iTunes. But there was a time delay yesterday, and so I didn't see your questions immediately. But please do say hello and introduce yourself. And if I don't see them during this because there is a time lapse, then I definitely will answer your questions if I can. So anyway, I am still Natalie Ann Johnson, and I run CraftAGoGo, which is a website where I share SVGs and craft files, and so I'm here today to talk about Cricut and Inkscape and Illustrator. Hello, Marianne too. And before I begin though, I need to remind you that my course is launching on Friday, and if you want to join my VIP list, then visit this link below, this cuttingmachinemagic.com. And you will get a link to get $100 off the course if you're interested in it. But even if you're not, there is a free file to make this swing card. But more importantly, there's a guide that comes with it that shows you how to make everything. Well, not how to make everything is, I mean, that's the future. But you can turn this card into, well, you can customize it for any occasion, and you can personalize it for any person. And so anyway, if you do follow that though, you will have learned all of the skills in Cricut Design Space by the time you get to the end of that. So I think it's worth downloading. So anyway, I'm going to start this Inkscape Illustrator thing. And I think the first question might be, which do I use? Do I use Inkscape or Illustrator? And well, an obvious thing is Inkscape's got this massive advantage in that it costs absolutely nothing. And I think it's a great option for that reason. And I actually use both. And honestly, both have bugs in them. But they're very different bugs. And I much prefer Illustrator, but that really is because of familiarity. And if you're new to using third-party software like this, I would highly recommend that you have a sort of play about with Inkscape, and then you'll just get used to the principles of graphic design. That sounds so awful, doesn't it? But you'll get used to the principles that you need to use in Inkscape. And then, if you really want to see what Illustrator is like, I'd recommend that you use their free trial. It's like a month long. And but I would make sure that you do it in a month where you've got a lot of time free, and just like use it as much as you can. And if you even want to create files during that month, you can do that. And I've been subscribed to Illustrator about 5 years now, and I used up so many free trials, honestly, before I did that. So I do recommend that you do that. But anyway, yeah, Illustrator does cost money. It costs I think it's $19.99 a month and £19.97 if you're in the UK. And yeah, it's I do think it's worth it though, but I think you'll get the most out of it if you just use that free trial and get used to Inkscape first. So anyway, I don't know if you saw yesterday's chat, which was about using Weld and Slice and Contour and Attach and Group in Cricut Design Space. And well, I think the first thing I need to talk about is why would you use this other software when you can do things in Cricut Design Space? Well, I mean, you probably are aware of, if you use your Cricut to any great extent, you probably will know that really when you're trying to create things, you're stamping things out of other things. It's like, instead of like using a pen to write things in whatever shape you want, you are taking a shape, usually that someone else has made, and you're just cutting pieces off it. And I think that, I mean, it really works for a while, but then I think there's a point where it gets a bit annoying. And for example, you can't create a curved line. And, you know, you probably really do want to do that if you're, if you're making any designs for anyone. And, right, okay, there's another thing is that, if you're working entirely in Cricut Design Space and you want to, if you want to share a file with someone else or sort of want to work outside Cricut Design Space, you can't really do that. You can do like this hack that involves taking a screenshot or screen grab or using a snippet tool. But, you know, really, I don't know, it's like they've got this sandbox that you can play in, or sandpit, and you can't really take your files outside. And following on from that is, if you can share your files, then you can sell your files. And I mean, you probably know, if you've got a Cricut or a cutting machine, you'll know that how brilliant it is to be able to make original designs for people. Well, and that is so good. But if you're making actual physical products, then you have to buy the inventory, you have to store them in your house, and you have to put the time into creating those one at a time. You know, it can take a long time, and also you have to post them off as well. And if you create a cut file in Inkscape or Illustrator, because you can't do that in Cricut Design Space, then you've actually created a digital product. And that means that you can create something once and sell it again and again and again while you're sleeping. It's almost like a side effect. It's like your enthusiasm for this machine will get you to this point where you can create this really nice thing, and then you can just sell it repeatedly without having to buy new blank items in and post them off and all that sort of thing. So that's another good reason. Sorry, there's another good reason. If you were using Design Space in November, just at the point where people were making up their Christmas orders, it did go down for a long time. And right, while Cricut Design Space is right, you're always going to need to use Cricut Design Space to cut things out. But you don't always have to work in the cloud to create a file. I mean, you do, if you use Cricut Design Space on its own, you do need to always be connected to the internet. But if you can use Inkscape or Illustrator, then you can at least work offline. And that means that, it stops a lot of frustration. But apart from that, in November, when people were having trouble, I seem to think people were just losing all the files they created, and that is just really alarming, isn't it? At least you know your files are safe if you've saved them on your computer or in another cloud even. And so yeah, that's another reason to do it. Though as I stress, you will always need to cut out on Cricut Design Space. But again, you know, it doesn't have to be a new design. It could just be that you need to personalize it, and you can save all of these versions on your computer rather than in the cloud. And anyway, right now, you've really have today seen enough of my face. So I am going to just put the screen on. Oh, God, you can still see me in the corner. But anyway, right, so I'm going to look at the interfaces that we'll use, and you will be, is it, I don't know, on my screen, I'm not sure that, yeah, I think we are in the screen view. Sorry about this. Yeah, we are in the screen view. Yeah, you will be familiar with this if you use your Cricut, and right, even if you're really familiar with it now, I'm sure at first it seemed quite intimidating. But if you look down the left-hand side, you've got like these main options open to you. I don't know about you, but I never use templates. I just don't find it useful. But, you know, you've got text and shapes, well, speaks for itself really. Images, where you can bring in new images, whether they're your own or from Cricut. And then there's this upload thing where you can, well, again, you can bring in more images. And yeah, and at the top, right, at the top, you've got all of these options to arrange things. Now, I just want to immediately compare that with, right, I'm just going to go now into Illustrator's interface. And right, if you look at this left-hand margin now, it can seem really intimidating, but that is only because there's so many choices. And I should have explained, like, the reason that I learned Illustrator was because I was making sewing patterns. And, you can feel my angst coming out. Because people are so varied in size nowadays, right? Some people are really small and some people are really large. And for every sewing pattern I made, I had to resize it about 20 times. And that involved like really precise skills that if I did an Illustrator course, I couldn't get them because nobody was thinking about sewing patterns. And I think the problem with this Cricut stuff is you don't want a whole Illustrator course. You want to just focus on the things that you need. So I'm going to click on T on the left, right? I'm in the Illustrator interface, and it's even the same as Cricut Design Space. It's a T. But again, when I click there, you can see that from the drop down, you've got a lot more choices. But I do just want to choose this type tool. So if I click on this here, I'm going to type this. I'm just going to type. Let me know what font am I got. I'm not going to use that font. I'm going to start with the default, which was Myriad, I think. Right. So I'm going to type text in Illustrator. And then that's that. Oh, actually, well, sorry, I am going to go back to Design Space. I'm going to use the text tool there. Look, that looks familiar again. It's text. So you click on that, and then this box comes up, and I can never tell where it's going to be. But I'm just going to type text in, oh no, wait a minute, which font do I want? No, I wanted it to be in the default, which is, I think it's Cricut Sans, isn't it? Okay, yeah, when you first start, this is what you'll get. You'll get Cricut Sans, usually. So I'm going to put, sorry, I'm going back into text. I don't find this very user-friendly. I don't use Cricut Design Space to design very often. So I'll just put text in Cricut Design Space. And then to just set that text, I just click on the outside. And now just for contrast, because we're looking at all three, I'm going to look at Inkscape and I'm going to do the same thing. There's a very slight difference here. It's not a T, it's an A. So if you click on that A, and then you've got these crosshairs on your canvas and you click on that, I'll just put text in. Oh my gosh, that's big, isn't it? Yeah, I need to zoom out a bit. I've got it too large. So then I'll just put text in, no, that's not right, in Inkscape. So, right, I'm going to go back to, wait a minute. I'm going to go back to Cricut Design Space, and I'm going to click on this text. I'm going to duplicate it a few times by clicking Command and C and Command and V, right? Because I want to try a few different fonts. And I'm going to, right, to show you the difference between these, to show you how much simpler it is to use Inkscape and Illustrator sometimes, I'm going to choose a script font. Sorry, I've got a few script fonts chosen here. What was I going to use? Oh, okay, yeah. Right, people who create stuff in Cricut tend to want to use these script fonts because they look really nice on signs and things. So I'm going to choose something called, right, sorry, I'm in the font menu in Cricut, and I don't want a Cricut font. I don't really use Cricut fonts. I'm going to use a system font. It's called is it called Sans? Oh, it's called, I don't know what it's called. No, actually, no, the one that I was going to use is actually a very well-known one called July 7th, July the 7th. So I'll click on that. And look, look, this is how it's turned out in Cricut Design Space. And for a long time, I've looked in forums and seen what people have made, and I've wondered why they were using script fonts and all the letters were separate. And I understand now, because it's really, really hard to alter this text in Cricut Design Space. And if you've done this, you will know that you have to then go to this top margin and adjust the letter space. So like you click this arrow at the top, and then very, very slowly it starts to join up. And it could take a really long time. But also it isn't consistent. It's because all of the fonts are different, then you know, they don't join up to the same extent. You can't just do the same letter space for every font. So then it gets to you have to mess with individual letters, and then to do that you have to click on Ungroup in this layers panel at the right and click at the top, and that just sort of frees your individual letters. Like you can see, I've dragged this E away, but it's really and like as you can see, I've joined all of these letters for this particular font up, and they do sort of form one word now. Well, separate words, but there's still the space is wrong in not the word space. The gaps between these words are wrong, so I'd have to select them and then move things around. And because Cricut Design Space, you've got to think that the people who've designed these fonts have spent years and years getting like the aesthetics of their font correct. They want it to look absolutely perfect. And so you're expected to go into Cricut Design Space and move things around individually, and you have to judge things by eye, and you can't align things like to the, for example, if I take this space and I go to align at the top and I align to bottom, look, that doesn't align them together, does it, properly? And then if I align to top, that doesn't align them. No, it's the only way that you can get it right is to use these controls where you move the letters and then you move the words together. And then you probably know that once you've done this, if you want to turn it into something to cut, you then have to select the whole thing or each individual word if you want to, whatever you do. To stop these being individual letters, you then have to left click and drag over them and then click on Weld, at which point this becomes a single piece. But my point there was that it took a long time to get to that stage. But that isn't just with system fonts. It also applies with Cricut fonts. Now, what's the Cricut font I was using earlier? I just want a Cricut font that's handwriting. Okay, I'll just try with Adelaide here, which is you pay like $4.99 for. All right. Wait a minute. So that's that one here. And is it right? So this is a writing font. And I mean, I love using writing on my Cricut. And again, look, even though it's a Cricut font, the spacing is all wrong. So then you need to move this letter spacing by messing around with these arrows in this top margin again. And even when you do that, it doesn't join together. So you have to choose Ungroup in the layers panel at the right, which will then free these individual letters, which you then have to group together. And so it was almost all right to do what we did before, which was work with this big July the 7th font, July 7th it is, font, and join it together. But imagine, this is a writing font, and if you're writing, you know, like people do the addresses on their wedding invitations and things. Can you imagine doing like several hundred addresses and having to join all of these up separately? It really doesn't work, does it? So for that reason, I just want to go straight into Illustrator. And I'm going to, I can't choose the Cricut font. That's all right for me because I'm not a big fan of any of the sorry, did I say Illustrator font? You can't use Cricut fonts outside Cricut Design Space. And that would be a problem if I really was attached to any of those fonts, but I'm not really. And so I'm just going to show you how that, remember that July, actually, I'm going to just copy this first so that we can try a few different fonts. All right, so if I click on this, then, right, I've got this select tool, which is at the top left here. That enables me to just, it puts a box around it, and then I can change character in this box on the bottom right. Then I can choose a different font. And I want to choose that July 7th font, right? And look at what happens on the canvas. Look, I've just selected July 7th. It's absolutely perfect. It's exactly as the designer intended it to be. So you don't have to do any of this text spacing. You don't have to do any of this guessing. Well, it'll give you a professional result. And I think that's all important when you're selling things online. Well, or giving any gifts. It just looks so much better. But there is what I need to tell you is that at the moment, this is a font in Illustrator. And as such, you can't import it into Cricut Design Space. If you save this now, you know, even if you saved it as an SVG, Cricut Design Space would say text elements unsupported. And that's because at the moment, it's just a font. You need to turn it into outlines. Right, you can see it's a font because it's got a line beneath it. And what we need it to be like a thin blue line on the outside of all of these letters. To do that, while this arrow, this top left arrow again, this selection tool, while that's selected, I just click on that and the box surrounds it. Then what I need to do is go to, in this top menu bar, I need to go to Type, and I need to go to Create Outlines. And before I click this, just look at that text, look at text in Illustrator and see what happens when I click on Create Outlines. All right, you can see now that that line has disappeared from beneath it, that blue line. And now we've got lots and lots of different letters, a bit like when in Cricut Design Space we spent ages grouping all the letters together. We've got they're all in exactly just a perfect position, but they're not joined as one piece. So if we imported this into Cricut Design Space now, it would work, but it would give it all as separate pieces. It would be like pre-Weld, you know. What we need to do is we need to do the Illustrator version of welding. And that is called the Pathfinder Tool. So with all this selected again, right, look, we've got this top left arrow here, the selection tool. Then I click on the text that I just messed with. Then I go to Window and I go to Pathfinder Tool. Now this, although it's got a lot of options, right, this left option is called Unite, and that is the equivalent of Weld. And this one to the right of it is called minus front. That is the equivalent of slice. So, but there are so many more ways of doing it in Illustrator. But what I'm going to do is I'll click on Unite. And again, I want you to look at this text and see what happens to it. Actually, yeah, I'll just click that now. All right. If I zoom in, you can see now that this is all one piece. And if I would delete these two first because then there's nothing happening there so far. But if I was to import this, right, what I would do is I would save this as an SVG file. And then I go to Cricut Design Space and I'd import it. And it would import it exactly, as you can see there, it would just be, everything would be in exactly the right place. No faffing around moving letters together or anything like that. And I think that the difference is just massive in terms of looking professional. And but it isn't just script font that's like this. If I go back to Cricut Design, yeah, that, again, as I said, that Cricut font itself was a bit mad too. But what was the other one I was using? Was it? I think it was called Anti-Font or something. So if I go into System, and I can choose anti-font. Again, look, this is a system font. So a system font is never going to write automatically. What happens in Cricut is it's only Cricut fonts that are automatically set for writing fonts. So if you want to use a font to write, i.e. with pens or draw as the function is, you have to choose like a single line font, but it will actually draw 2 lines. But you have to choose a version that's so thin that you can, that your pen, even if your pen draws twice over it, it's not super thick. So, but again, the Cricut just spreads everything out, and God, it would take you just forever to get this absolutely right. So I'm going to try that font in Illustrator 2. It was called Anti-Font, wasn't it? So if I go to Anti-Font here, look, that's exactly as it just looks like handwriting. So you would, even though this looks like a single stroke, well, it is a single stroke font, but you can't recreate it exactly in Cricut. You'd need to do the same thing that we did just now, right? You need to turn this to outlines, even though it looks like you shouldn't have to. What we would do is we'd click on this and the line is underneath it. Then we will go to Type and we will go to Create Outlines. And if we zoom in, you can see it is actually outlines, but it's so thin that your Cricut pen will draw it to look like a single. You know, there's like a good list of fonts that you can do this with. My favourite is always here, but we'll get onto that later probably. If you look at closely though, you can still see that these are separate letters. So even though this is it's not going to be cut from vinyl or paper, it's going to be written or drawn. And for that reason, we've got to go back to this Pathfinder tool. Now it's still up for me, but just a reminder that if it isn't there for you, go to Window and Pathfinder. See, it's ticked for me, but it will pop up if you choose Window, Pathfinder. Now, with this all selected, I need to click on Unite. And there it is, right? It is outlines, but do not try to cut this on vinyl. You will be very upset and the result will be really bad. However, if you use pens and you bring this into Cricut Design Space, right, so you'd save this as an SVG, bring it into Cricut Design Space, and then change the settings at the top where it says line type. If you change it to draw, then this will ask you to put the correct pen in and it will write it. It will seem to write it twice, but the effect will be what you're looking for. So we've looked at Cricut Design Space with fonts, and we've looked at them in Illustrator. So now let's look at Inkscape. Right. So Inkscape, the main thing about Inkscape is, gosh, you see it and you think, oh my God, it's 1997 again. What's this light grey thing about? So even though it looks really old and it's free, there's so many options. It's an amazingly sophisticated piece of software that will cost you nothing. And as I said before, you will learn so much just using Inkscape. So we created the text, didn't we, a long time ago now it seems, by clicking on the A there and typing. Now with this selection tool at the top left, I'm going to click on this. No, actually, sorry, I got that wrong. While we're still in this text version there, at the big A again, and this is selected, I need to go to this box at the top left which says sans serif as default to change the font, and I'm going to choose the same one again because, well, it's a good comparison with the original one that we did. So I'll click on this drop down and I will again go to July 7th. Where is it? There we go. Just like in Illustrator, even though this is totally free, it's in exactly the right place, isn't it? You don't have to do anything with it. You don't have to space the letters. You don't have to chop anything apart. You don't have to move things separately or try and guess how things go. It's exactly as you want it to be. But again, it's text. You can't import it into Cricut Design Space as it is because it Cricut Design Space will say text elements not supported. And so we need to convert this to outlines like we did with Illustrator. So I'll just click on this. Again, while this select tool at the top left is chosen, I'll just click on this text. Then what I need to do is I need to go to Path in the top menu bar, and I need to choose Object to Path. And it looks as if nothing's happened, and I might have got it wrong. Nothing might have. But to see what might have changed, I need to go to the selection tool beneath it, which is Edit Paths by Nodes. All this will do is just show you every point that's created this big image. And if I click on that now, right, and then I click on the actual text, look, all of these mad grey dots, I'll zoom in again, these show that this is now an outline. And you don't need to worry about what these nodes are at the moment, but it's just that these create this big shape. And now these letters, they're all outlines. But as we saw in previous, both in Cricut Design Space and in Illustrator, they're all separate letters still. So if I just zoom out slightly. So we need a version of Weld for Inkscape. And in Illustrator, that was the Pathfinder tool. And in Inkscape, what you need to do is you just shift and click on the letters, like individually. So I've got shift clicked, I've clicked on T, I'm clicking on X and T. Actually, I'm going to zoom out first. And then I will click on the I and the N. What I'm doing is I'm just clicking on all of them. So I've selected each letter. And so now I need to choose this equivalent to Weld or Pathfinder. And in Inkscape, it is Union. So like from this top margin here, I go Path and Union. And then it should be all one piece. If I go, yeah, you can see it's all one piece. And I don't want to confuse you too much, but I can tell, oh, look, if I click off, you can see it's all one piece. That red line surrounds the whole thing. It is all, well, I keep saying all one piece. What I mean is it's, the in is together. You're going to still have some dots on top of eyes and things, but it is as you would want it if you wanted to put it onto some transfer paper or something. And so, wait a minute, what was I going to say now? Yeah, and it's the same with any sort of script fonts. You can change all your script fonts in Inkscape too. And again, all that you would do once you've completed, it's exactly the same in Illustrator and in Inkscape. You would just save this as an SVG, and then you would import it into Cricut Design Space. And importantly, if you wanted to sell this on Etsy, you would want to offer it in different formats, like for different cutting machines, whether it's, so if you want to offer it for silhouette machines, or some people want just printables. So, I mean, I always offer it in SVG, EPS, DXF, PNG, and PDF formats. And then what I do is I just compress it as a zip file. And you can do all of this in Inkscape, and you can do all of this in Illustrator. And I mean, there's so many more things that you can do with it. But, I hope you can see that what we've just done in Inkscape and Illustrator was so much more easy to do. Well, it took a lot less time, and also the results were much more accurate than in Cricut Design Space. As much as I love Cricut Design Space, with the advantage that you can share it and you can sell it and you can work offline. If you've got all these orders and it's November, you've got all your Christmas orders and you want to change people's names, you just want to get it ready to cut when Design Space is back online again, it is so easy to do. And yeah, I think that is, I've got that mainly covered. I mean, there's so many more things you can do. It's like, as I say, right, that when I started to use Illustrator, the thing that was really difficult is, I'll just go back into this Illustrator interface again. But it's exactly the same with Inkscape. Wait a minute, sorry, I keep clicking on the wrong thing. There, yeah. Right, when I started with Illustrator, I just kept getting it all wrong. It's this toolbar at the left, but if you're using Cricut, you can do so many things. You can recreate the whole of Design Space, definitely, and more, by just knowing this shape tool, this rectangle tool, this type tool here, and this selection tool. But you can do so many more things beyond that. But this is just a way to recreate what you do in Design Space, and then you can share it and sell it. Beyond that, though, you can create any lines you want, any shapes you want in both of these programs. So, but anyway, yeah, sorry, I'm just stressing how I think that my experience with the Cricut will be entirely different had I not known how to use Illustrator. It really does open up your machine to you. And I'm just wondering, has anybody got any questions? Because I feel like I've gone on for quite a while. There are so many functions, I could go on all night with this, but I would love to know if you've got any questions. And if, due to the time lapse, you can't see, I mean, I don't see them immediately, I will certainly get to it later on. So please do ask a question if you want to. And again, at this point, I'm going to remind you that my course does launch at the end of the week. And if you sign up now at the link, the www.cuttingmachinemagic.com, you will get put on the early bird list, the VIP list for the early bird offer, which will give you $100 off the course if you are interested in it. But if you don't need to, then please still ask questions, because I'm here to help if you want to know how to use Inkscape or Illustrator. And also, if you sign up again, you will get the template to make the swing card and a really detailed step-by-step instructions on how to make any variation of this card for any occasion or any person using the elements that are free in Cricut Design Space and your own photographs. So, oh gosh, no questions. Should I make some up? I would like to make some up. Actually, something that you will have to, right, something that's much easier in Illustrator and Inkscape is if you're using a script font, and lots of people like to use the font Samantha, for example, and I've got my own favourite fonts too. And they've got all of these different, you probably know them as swirly characters, but they're called flourishes or embellishments. And you have to work outside Cricut Design Space to have access to all of those, and certainly to incorporate them in your designs. So, you know, if you need to work in Illustrator and Inkscape really to get the most out of all these things. Otherwise, you just have to cut and paste them into Cricut Design Space, which again means you have to separate letters and move them around, and they're not as accurate, and they're not as the designer who spent years creating them to get them perfect. They're not as the designer intended. So, oh, Angela, thank you for asking a question. Right, I'm going to ruin everyone's night by coming back on the screen. Okay. Wait a minute. Hello, Angela. Right, why do we use Weld, right? Weld is just in Cricut Design Space, and it's sort of because they're sort of trying to offer you as many functions as they can, like that are in graphic design software, but they want to make it so that you can just get in straight away and use it on your machine. So what Weld does is you've typed a message out, or well, a slogan or whatever, or a name, and you want to join it all up together as one piece. And what Weld does is makes it all one piece that can be cut out. Or if you're writing it, Weld will just write it as one. It's just to join the thing up so that it's one piece. And as I just showed it in that, when we were looking at the other software, you can weld things in Illustrator by using the Pathfinder Tool, and you can do it in Inkscape by using Union. And so that's why we use Weld. Also, no, the fonts don't come preloaded. Well, some of them do. Some of the fonts come preloaded in Inkscape and Illustrator, right? The vast majority of fonts I use, I get from Creative Fabrica or font bundles, right? For me, the main problem is, certainly if I want to design something new and I want to share a design or sell a design, I want to make sure I've got a commercial use license. And every time you use a font on Creative Fabrica or font bundles, then it's got it's really generous commercial use license that means that you can share it. And I know a lot of people like to use the font or font squirrel, and I think they're great to test out the font that's really useful for you. But if you want to use it commercially, legally, and you don't want to breach any copyright or anything, you will have to buy another license on top of that. And, I think that's completely fair because designers spend a lot of time making these things, so they want to charge. But because they're free on the font, you probably will pay more for a commercial license on there. However, if you use Creative Fabrica or font bundles, anytime you get anything from there, even if it's free and they offer freebies every day, I will put a link in after this to those, because even if you get a free font, they're daily free font, and they also do daily free graphics, it comes with that commercial use license and you don't have to pay anything else. And I just like the peace of mind of knowing that if I buy a font on there, you can buy lots of fonts on there and they're all really inexpensive. It's like you can buy so many great fonts for just $1, or you can buy them for $15, but that's nothing considering that you get the commercial license. And I found great script fonts, for example. I know lots of people like to use Samantha, and I think that's a great font. But for a bit of variety, you can get a lot more script fonts with embellishments and flourishes on Creative Fabrica and font bundles. So I really would recommend that you use those sites because, as I say, if you use the font or font squirrel, if you don't buy the commercial license on top of that, you could be breaking the law, and nobody wants to do that. And yes, so has anyone got any more questions? Oh, Beth, thank you for your question. When I download and install a font, it comes with different version, bold, italic, etc. Sometimes it has a shadow layer. Do I have to type the text twice and use the normal font, and then in the second type text do I click the shadow layer, or does it combine both, meaning I only type the text once, not needing to duplicate it? That's a very good question. Right, so I presume that you're talking about within Cricut Design Space. If you do this in Cricut Design Space, then you have to type the shadow layer, and depending on the font, you might have to weld it after that. You'd certainly need to attach it so that it's all in the right place. And then you need to type the second one. It depends what font you're using. I mean, there are some really brilliant fonts with shadow layers. I don't really use the Cricut ones, but there are good ones on font bundles and Creative Fabrica. I use something called Hopia. Oh no, actually that hasn't got a shadow layer. Though the one with the shadow layer, sorry, is called Alexandria. I can't even remember where that is, but it's like a script font and it's got a shadow layer at the back. So what you'd need to do, to get back to your question, you need to type the shadow layer, and then you'd need to, if you were using Alexandria, certainly because it's a script font, you'd need to select it all and weld it, and then you'd need to type your letters and then weld those two. And then but before you put it together, create one of the layers in a different colour to the other one, and you might find that you lose it for a while, it will disappear to the back. So arrange it so that the thinner layer is at the front, like in the top menu, you'll put arrange, bring to front. And then you need to center it all together. And that shouldn't be hard using a line at the top. But if you have any difficulty at all, let me know and I'll be happy to help you with that. But I hope that answered the question. In short, yes. you do need to type them separately, but also you need to weld them first. But in my demonstration before, it will be like in Cricut Design Space, you have to arrange all the letters first so they join up perfectly, and you will have to do the same with the shadow layer. However, if you want to experiment with Inkscape or Illustrator, I don't know why I'm pointing over there to Inkscape and Illustrator. If you want to experiment with Inkscape and Illustrator, then they will be in exactly the right place. So for that reason, I'd recommend having a go, and do let me know if you try that or you get stuck. Because honestly, once you try doing these fonts in Inkscape and Illustrator, you'll find it just so much simpler that there's no going back. So yeah. Oh, thank you. You say you understand. Thank you. But sorry I waffled a bit, but if you need any more explanation, I'm really happy to help. You know, if you've got a specific example or anything. So has anyone else got any more questions? Right, I can't see any more questions for now, but if you've got any questions, do add them here and I will definitely answer them. And yeah. Oh, and I've got to remind you to go to Cutting Machine Magic and get on the VIP list if you want to, or to get the free download for our card. And sorry, Beth says, I have Inkscape. I only ever used it for converting JPEGs to SVGs and play. Yes. Oh gosh, I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah, just play with it. I think when you mention Inkscape and Illustrator to people, the heart just, you can see the heart sink. And it's just like having this brilliant big sketch pad that you can just draw anything you want on. And I think that's the spirit to approach it with. It's just about experimentation. And once you get these few key skills, you can really just build on them. And honestly, if you can use Cricut Design Space, you can definitely use Inkscape or Illustrator. So I hope you have fun with it. Oh, Sharon, when you try to download Inkscape, I can't find it. It's Xink plus graphics. Oh, I don't know what computer you're using. If you're using a Mac and you download Inkscape, you'll have to download something called Xquartz. And that can seem like a pain, but when you get the hang of it, it's just like a short-term pain that you get over. But anyway, right, no, I will look at this though, and I will get back to you and see what you mean by this Xink plus graphics. Because I'm pretty sure you'll be able to use Inkscape. It might depend on the computer you're using. And I should have said a long time ago, you can't use these on, if you've got a mobile phone, you can't use this. And on your iPad, you would be better using something like Affinity Designer. So I really should have said that a while ago. But all of the principles are the same. And with this graphic design software, you can just do all of these things. You just have to get used to them. And thank you, Lisa, for putting that link in. In Windows, it's in the mic. Okay. But Inkscape should be it is free. So, but anyway, any problems, just let me know. And so yeah. Oh, okay. So the other thing I need to remind you is we are back tomorrow and we are looking at print and cut. So if you've got any questions at all about print and cut, then I will do my absolute best to help. But if you have any questions, just put them in this thread and I will answer them. And I hope I've been some help today. And thank you so much for joining me. And hopefully see you tomorrow. So bye-bye.